Hey, this is Aaron from the Photographer Mindset podcast, and I know it can be overwhelming choosing a print company. Luckily, I was introduced to Whitewall by Seth, and in all honesty, I'll never look back. I've been wanting to continue my national park wall for a long time, but I couldn't settle on a printing company, and that's when Seth suggested Whitewall, and they delivered. The quality is amazing, the shipping speed was unbelievably fast, and the ease of their website was straight up impressive. I especially love their image optimization tool that adds a subtle amount of pop to your prints. Definitely check out Whitewall for all of your printing needs.
Mark Smith, thanks for joining us today, man. I know we had to rearrange the schedule around because I'm a Canadian dealing with snowstorms and power outages, and I wonder what Americans truly think of Canadians. Do you really think we ride around on moose and have igloos and all these things? I mean, it sure sounds like it when I have to cancel a super important podcast for snowstorms.
No, I mean, that's just the way things go. Then thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Right off the bat, here's my first question for you. You got an amazing YouTube channel, tons of insightful knowledge. You got workshops you're running, online courses, consistently managing an Instagram account, answering emails like ours to join our podcast. Here you are. Again, thank you. How the hell do you manage? Are there sacrifices? Are you maximizing your time? Are you like a pro at efficiency? Let us know here.
I would say I'm not a pro at anything. And before this, I did not have gray hair. So it's a direct result of all of this stuff. Now, I think in its simplest form, it's just kind of about living life to its fullest every day as much as you can. But managing it, definitely is hard, very hard. And I find myself a lot of times not having time to do certain things, so you learn to prioritize certain things. And one thing that I learned doing this, that's hard, and I think a lot of people don't prioritize, is actually self-care. You have to give yourself time to do the things that you want to do outside of this, whatever that might be, like the gym or meditating or playing music or whatever it is. You have to kind of break away from this because it's hard to, or it's easy to get kind of sucked in and not break away because you want to manage and take care of everything. But you have to give yourself time to move away from these things and enjoy some other things to kind of disconnect, if you will.
Do you find it difficult to do that?
For me, and I guess my personality type, yes. I have to I literally have to either schedule it or physically force myself to stop and go do something else that's not related to this. So
I can totally relate to that. There's this, it's funny. You see all these, we come across these things online where it's like work harder, grind, hustle culture and all that stuff. But there's a group of people who are like that, who need the opposite message. Go watch Netflix, go chill. Take a minute, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the people who are absorbing a lot of the grind, hustle need the opposite at times. And I'm speaking to myself, and I wonder if you can relate to that at times.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that fascinates me is Elon Musk. I know not everybody likes this guy, but some of the stuff he does is fascinating. And one of the ways he does kind of disconnect from his busy world is he'll go play Diablo.
Isn't he ranked number 1 in the world or something?
Yes, it's crazy, but that makes sense. He's kind of disconnecting from all of this stuff, and he's just kind of investing his time and brain in somewhere else. And kind of along the same lines, I think you have to force yourself to do this every once in a while if you want to maintain both your mental and physical health. Otherwise, it can be bad.
I think of any aspect of life as like a gym workout, and photography, let's say, is the bicep. And if you're just working your bicep and all you're doing is working biceps at the gym, other deficiencies are gonna pop up. So you gotta take a rest. You gotta rest that bicep for it to keep going, keep growing, not getting hurt, not getting injured. You have to move to squats or the legs or back or whatever it may be. You have to kind of balance those things out. Otherwise, you just keep going and you'll end up burning it out. And I think with social media and email, there's no stop time. You know, it's 24 hours a day, messages from all over the world, especially with a huge account like that, just keeps on flowing. And you almost have to segment your time to say like, no, I'm not looking at email from this time to this time because like I need to do other things.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's a great analogy too. I would agree with that 100%.
Every gym rat who loves doing curls is now mad at us. So
yeah, that's all I do, bruh.
Good leg day. Come on.
Girls love the girls.
So safe to presume that you would accredit a lot of your success in videography and photography and all the things you have going on to actually taking a step away. I think we've identified that here. For people who maybe don't know the more personal side of you, what are some of those things? I know you mentioned music, meditation, like more nuanced. What do you like to dig into to kind of keep your head on your shoulders and stay sane?
So I like to read. I read a lot.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Both.
Okay.
I'm fascinated with both. Fiction is great because you can go into a fantasy world, and just completely just be there. And then right. I really love, biographies and learning about people that I admire. Like I think Anthony Bourdain's book is one of the best books I've ever listened to, actually. And I suggest that one as an audiobook because he narrates it and it's fascinating to hear him tell his stories. But that kind of stuff, I love music. I love listening to music. I think music is one of the greatest gifts we have as a human being in every way, like in consuming it and creating it, all that stuff. I love movies, like really good cinema, really good movies, and the occasional video game. I've played video games my entire life, so they're a great way to kind of disconnect and unwind and move away from all of that stuff. And then like the silliest one too, like, you mentioned the gym. The gym is an excellent way to do that. Cause again, like when you go to the gym, you're kind of on autopilot and, you're just doing these reps and then your brain can kind of decompress. And I find the same thing if you just go for a walk, like a long walk is great. Like if you're working on something like a video or like a series of images and you find yourself stuck, one of the best things you can do is just get up and just go for a walk for like 20 or 30 minutes. You'd be amazed at what that does to your brain and kind of resets you and helps you back in that creative flow.
Yeah, for sure. It's amazing when you are struggling on something and then you take that break and you come back and you're like, I was struggling on this.
Yeah. I should have taken the break a long time ago. I don't know why I didn't, right? Yeah.
It sounds like everything you're describing is what you call like an active meditation. Like if you go for a walk, you're focusing on the footsteps, the feel of the pavement, what it goes through your shins, through your knees, whatever it may be. You're focused on one activity, and that frees up the brain from that super focus on whatever else you were doing, that video editing for 10 hours straight. It just brings you to a different spot and gives that part of the brain a rest and a recoup, and then you can come back to it much more refreshed and sharp and like eager to get at it versus like I've been in front of the screen where you're like, I can't like see right now. And you gotta take a step away.
Yeah.
You just walk away from the screen sometimes and you can't see anything beyond 4 feet in front of you.
All the time. I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. In my office, I have above lights and it reflects off the screen. And when I'm editing, if I don't turn those off, sometimes I forget because I like the light, but there's a reflection that makes my eyes go like absolutely bonkers. And it makes my fatigue 300%. I get fatigued with what I'm editing because I'm just constantly trying to focus around these reflections. I got to fix that. Well,
let me ask you this, Mark. How do you, speaking of workflow, how do you get into a good state of focus and workflow? Are you eliminating distractions? Are you just throwing on tunes and chilling? What's that look like for you when you feel like you're really in the zone?
So for me personally, it's first thing in the morning, wake up, have something decent to eat and a little bit of coffee, not too much on the stimulants, but a little bit of coffee.
Not to the point where you're shaking?
No, not at all. And I would say like the next 4 hours are probably my best for creating. And I know that like by 11 or noon, I'll start to wind down and I can take a break and have lunch. But I know from that point on, my creative process is just kind of spent for the day.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that idea of here's my creative window. And here's where I know that I'm powering down. So this is where I'll do emails. This is where I'll do stuff that's kind of autopilot.
Yeah.
And becoming aware of that. I think we talked in the first little bit here about mindfulness, going for walks and stuff like that. Is that something you've developed or have you always felt like you've kind of known where your zones are?
I think I've learned that just through time and through experience and through a lot of life experience that wasn't fun. Those are some of the best ways to kind of move past difficult times in life too, along with all of the things you love, like photography and music too. I think they're all great ways to kind of focus on yourself and get into the zone as well. And like for photography too, for me, it's kind of easy to get into that moment as long as, well, I wouldn't even say that. I was gonna say as long as the activity is there, but like if I go out, like for instance, like yesterday, I went out to photograph some birds close to my house, which I will do usually every morning. I love the sunrise and to spend the time out there. But the birds were literally like non-existent. There was no activity whatsoever. But I found the beach had these massive piles of shells everywhere. And I still wanted to take photos. So I just started taking photos of shells. But like for me, it was still kind of that process. How can I get a composition and use a light and all these things and still kind of scratching that creative part of my brain? I feel almost like I need that. Like that's part of my being. So.
Yeah. I have a very philosophical question to both of you that just came up from this. Is all of life, is every aspect of life that we do a distraction or a respite from another aspect of life? Is it just a kind of dance around and circle around? I do photography to get away from work. I go to the gym to get away from photography. I have a relationship to get away from loneliness. I have coffee to get away from sleepiness. Like, are all our rituals running from something else? And it creates this beautiful equation, this beautiful math equation or song or whatever you want to call it, that creates our individual fingerprint.
That's
discuss.
Deep. Yeah, I would say, like, I think yes, and I think the key point to this is it's a balance. That's where it's crucial. Like you're saying, if you just do the biceps all one day, everything is out of whack. But if you can balance all of these things equally, then you're kind of balanced yourself as you are, as your human experience is. But it would seem so, yeah. Like you're kind of leveraging one to offset the other, and then vice versa. But again, kind of trying to maintain like a baseline the whole time through it.
Yeah.
Well,
not to get too dark, but I think there would be some people who would argue that it's all a distraction from mortality. But I like to take the approach of it's all in a quest for happiness. Everything we do, you can relate back to that.
Yeah. Ooh, there's a lot of deep thought on both those ideas.
So rather than go down that for the next 2 hours, I wanted to kind of just rewind. You mentioned you went to the beach yesterday hoping to shoot and film some birds.
Yep.
Photograph, not shoot them.
Yeah.
And the scene maybe didn't deliver what you had idealized, but you were there anyways, and the shells were really cool. I think there's something to be said for forward momentum in any sense. So I think Aaron and I have talked about this. I can't get my 2-hour gym workout in, but I can get 10 push-ups in.
Yeah.
I can't get exactly what I want to do, but it's worth staying for something. I think a lot of people could have the tendency to be like, my ideal situation didn't show up, so I'm just going to get in the car and go home. Otherwise, like, what's the point? What's your thought on doing something rather than nothing?
Ooh, I guess, I think it's important to just kind of go with the flow.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
I realize that's a deep question, but
yeah,
it doesn't seem like you're the kind of person to, it wasn't the best or what I hoped for. I have other things I can do, so I'll just turn around. Why do you think you are that way? Have you always been that way, or is it not always the case?
I don't think I've always been that way. I think I've evolved to learn to just kind of go with whatever is thrown your way and then try to make the best out of it.
Now, I know you mentioned some tough times. Have you maybe learned that through those?
100%. Definitely.
Like, without pressing too much, we try to get vulnerable on this show. Are you comfortable sharing some of those, or how maybe photography?
We'll go dark real fast.
Yeah. And then we'll get bright.
Yeah.
Life is shadow and light.
Listen, like, we're all real. We all have struggles. Nobody has it all figured out. We've all dealt with terrible things. Terrible things are going to happen to us. Great things are going to happen to us. This is the human experience. And I think, having someone like yourself on who has a very large audience, it humanizes us. And I think that's part of the goal of the show, is to realize that people who are incredibly successful in their fields, like you and who we look up to, like, you are a human being, and people can relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, it would be death of my two favorite people in the world. My brother, 3 years older than me, he died in 2015 of lung cancer. We were in a band together. He was the singer. I was a guitar player. We were pretty much inseparable. We were best buds. So that was very difficult to deal with. And like, nobody kind of taught me how to deal with grief or any of that stuff, or what I would be feeling. And, kind of just, I took it day by day. Then 5 years later, my wife of 28 years died of a sudden aneurysm within 12 hours, was dead.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So like, there's some good stuff in between all of that. Like really odd when my blood brother, Brian, died. Like 3 years later, my mom told me that I had another brother that she had to give up for adoption because my grandmother forced her to.
Wow.
And so it was a weird flip, and I looked at that moment as like, regardless of how bad today is, you never know what tomorrow might bring you. And the odds of it being something that are amazingly cool that you would have never anticipated are just as good as it being the other way. And I've personally seen it, go the other way. So to find out that I had another brother that I didn't even know about when I had just lost one brother was like really weird and surreal.
Wow.
But it taught me that lesson. But through all of that too, like photography played a huge role in both of those things. Like, because I could go out and do photography, and especially of these animals, and kind of in a way live vicariously through them, and see that like the ospreys, if on a given day they might fail 15 or 20 times, but they never stop. There's nothing that stops them. Even like if they lose a wing, they still try to just to do their best. And I took a lot from that, and, told myself, like, if these animals can do all of this too, then there's no reason why you can't, kind of get through these darker times as well. So.
Also, I mean, the lesson from wildlife that I've learned too, you spend enough time out there and you're like, Jesus, like this world is wild and cruel. Like as your slogan says, the fish. I mean, just day to day, or a bunny being ripped apart by a raptor. Like, not to get dark, but if you spend enough time out there, it's not as cushy as we'd like to think life is.
That's right.
Like it's complete safety. No one's ever going to harm me. I'm completely just immune from any of the darkness of life. But if you zoom out and take a look, you learn a lot of like, wow, I'm lucky to be breathing.
Yeah.
Just in this moment. I really am. Because it could be so many other different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just think that's I relate to that point. I've had that shock moment, which is watching wildlife be wild.
Yeah. And I mean, through the whole process too, you learn so much about these subjects like you're talking about and their daily struggles. And it helps you kind of realize that this is like a universal part of life, regardless of what you are, animal or human. I mean, that's just part of the daily thing that we have to go through. And you learn a lot about yourself, at least I did, introspectively through all of that. And I found it extremely helpful. And I've had some interesting experiences that kind of foreshadowed and mirrored all of these things prior in the animal world, which was kind of a weird connection to have as well. So.
Now, was photography part of your equation before 2015? Was that a big part of your equation, or something that grew at that point?
I think it's when I kind of cracked the egg open in my brain, and photography really showed me to see the world in a completely different way. At that time, I had my late wife, had this amazing idea to sell everything we own, get an RV, and just travel in the United States. So we did, with 2 children and 3 dogs. And we did that for about 9 months. And that, again, for me, was one of the coolest experiences I've had in my life, hands down. It was an amazing thing to do. And that's where I really started to kind of grow and see all of these different people, cultures, foods, animals, all of these things is like just constant stimulus override. And that's when I really started to do photography. And at the same time, that's when my brother kind of started to go downhill, and we had learned about all of that stuff. So it was kind of just the way that the timing, the way that all of that stuff worked. And it's interesting too, because my late wife, like she did some weird stuff that is kind of unexplainable to me, like this. Like her words to me exactly were, I want to be able to do this before I can't. And she had no idea that she was going to die in, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. But like looking back on it, I'm like, oh, it's almost like if there was like some outside force kind of just planted that seed in her brain and said, hey, you need to do this and you need to do it now. And she did another interesting thing too that I've found really, really odd. I have a portrait of her on my left shoulder, and about maybe 5 years before she died, she came to me and asked me to change it to a sugar skull version of her. And I was like, that's weird. Why do you want me to do that? And she's like, it just seems like a good idea. I was like, huh? All right. I mean, I did it for you, so sure, I'll change it to a sugar skull. And then now that she has passed, that's the way that the Mexican or the culture honors people that have passed. So it's almost like, again, like she had some kind of weird insight that told her, this will probably be better this way because I'm not going to be here anymore. So again, that kind of very bizarre things.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah. My pleasure, I guess.
I don't. This all reminds me of I was actually looking it up so I didn't butcher the quote from Marcus Aurelius. The wise man accepts his pain, endures it, but does not add to it.
Yeah, that's great.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that so much, and I think it relates here. Yeah,
there's a really good song too that kind of says the same thing by. I'm going to probably get the name of the band wrong. A Perfect Circle. It's one of Maynard's bands, but the song is called Green River. And if you actually listen to the lyrics, it's about kind of traveling this river and just going with the flow and not fighting it at all and trusting what that final destination is going to be. And just whatever it is, you just have to kind of go with the flow. So kind of the same. And I get a lot of stuff from that kind of stuff too. From music, there's a lot of power in music, and it's a great gift that these musicians air their suffering for us to kind of vicariously process stuff through
or relate to.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you mentioned the term "go with the flow" a lot?
Yeah.
Do you ever catch yourself fighting the flow?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And how do you cue into that? Do things start going wrong? Do you start making mistakes? Or you're not having the same kinds of successes? And you're like, oh my God, I'm forcing it. Or, oh my God, I'm not letting things play out.
I think for me, honestly, it just stems up in the form of anxiety.
Got it.
To be 100% honest. And I'm very aware of when this happens. And that's when I know I'm fighting whatever it is that is the flow. And then that's when you if you can let go, then the anxiety kind of goes away as well. If that makes sense.
I think what you're really talking about is allowing the things you can't control and identifying the things you can't control and accepting the things you can't control.
Yeah.
Which is very hard to do.
It is. I can sit here and tell you, oh yeah, I've done that, but there are many times I've failed. Many times. So it's definitely not an easy task. I think it's one of the most challenging tasks of the human experience is to trust and go with the flow. So
some sort of faith, whether that's religious or otherwise.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what they call like meditation a practice. I think it takes practice, and it takes directed practice at that skill, that brain skill of I'm thinking, nope, come back to where I am. I'm thinking, nope, come back to where I am. And that repetition is a muscle. And the better you get at it, the more you do it under good circumstances, quote unquote good, when we start to go away into that negative cyclone of thought, you're just better at being like, whoa, I'm making up a lot of thoughts here. Like I'm just going down that river of thought, and I need to get back to my own river and just kind of, I'm here now, I'm safe, I'm looking around, like, okay, what can I do right now? And that's a tough thing to do. That's a tough ask.
It is. I saw something speaking of social media the other day, and I don't remember who it was, but it was a very interesting twist on the the feeling of anxiety or fear or pain, basically saying that the next time you are feeling anxious, remember the part of your brain that is like aware is not anxious. The next time you're feeling pain, the part of your brain that is aware of this pain is not in pain, and try to be back to that place where that awareness just is. Like, and it made a lot of sense to me. I was like, well, I never really looked at it that way.
Yeah.
That's
switching gears. You brought us into the social media world. How much time do you spend, would you say? Let's use the big app, Instagram.
Oh,
and of that time, be honest. And of that time, how much do you spend, I guess, focusing on your own content, that being posting, replying to comments, DMing, etc., versus just consumption, whether for enjoyment, inspiration, etc.?
Oh, a lot. I try to post if I can at least once a day, sometimes twice. I don't know if that's a lot for everyone else, but for me, that is like,
that's a lot.
Yeah, because I want it to be good, and I wanted to try to show something to people that maybe they've never seen or experienced before. And then I want to kind of either make it philosophical or humorous, one of the two, so there's a lot of thinking involved. And then kind of dropping that same content on multiple platforms, and then kind of circling back. I know you asked about time. I'm just trying to get this all in my brain. Circling back and taking care of the post from the prior day and all the questions that might have existed from the prior day's post, and kind of going and letting people know that I'm not actually a bot, that I can actually respond to them in the way that they want. But I would say just in the morning, like, and this is probably a bad habit, trying to get that first thing up. It could be 30 minutes to an hour, trying to get that together just to put it up there. And then, like, for me, like, what I like to do, because I go out early in the morning, is I might just drop it all on social media, and then that's my disconnect. I'm not going back there until maybe later in the afternoon. And then I'll go back out and do my thing, like collect more content, so to speak, and then come back and then maybe dive back in and see what has evolved. And I like to look too at every post literally as an experiment. Like try to change something if you can, and just kind of see what happens with it. And I mean, it's free to do. So, I mean,
with the goal of getting a better response, getting more views.
I would say with the goal of probably getting a better response, or just to see how people respond to certain things, whatever it is that you might have changed. Like, to bring up any kind of negativity is weird, but I get some negativity because I actively watermark my stuff with a banner just for like a second or two, to try to alleviate the thievery that happens. And some people are very vocal about how much they hate that it just ruins the entire 30-second clip, like a 1 second thing on there, that I'm egotistical prick for advertising my name.
I can't see the bird. Where is it? It's blocked by the watermark.
Those are the same people, those are the same people that want to steal it.
Yeah, right. So it's weird. And I got creative with that for a little bit and had fun with it. I literally took like 30 selfies, like really goofy pictures of myself, like, ugh, and I would just make that pop up at the bottom and literally say, here's your watermark. It was literally me going, just for a second in the bottom screen somewhere. And that was fun to play with all the haters that were doing all that. But,
you gotta have fun with it.
And you can't please everybody. I think that's an important concept. As you grow, whether that's in numbers or in popularity, you start to not be able to please everybody. And I feel Aaron and I've talked about this. You get to a size where people, especially behind keyboards, the negativity is just so easy to chuck out, because you become like not a human almost.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
You get more eyes, and just the statistics of people that suck, it just increases. You're just in front of more people that want to just chop you down or spend their time hating online. Yeah. So you got to be able to sift those. Seth and I might get something once a year. If you have millions of people seeing it, you're going to probably get it once a week, maybe once a day. Who knows?
Yeah, it's daily.
It's daily.
How do you deal with that? Do you just whatever?
Yeah,
you can take it personally, right? Like, we can have the tendency to take it personally. Aaron and I have struggled with this a little bit as the podcast has grown. Like, you get a bad review and you're like, oh man, I want everybody to love us, but it's just not possible.
Yeah. Generally, the rule for me is don't feed the trolls. But every once in a while, I'll go in and rage bait them just because I know what they're going to do. And then I'm out. I'm never even go back there and look. And they just get in this cycle of hate and spewing all their stuff. And I'm no longer part of it. But I don't do that all the time, but sometimes I do.
Yeah.
And depending on the level of like their negativity, most of it I'll let ride, just whatever. It is what it is. You're allowed to have your views. But if they get into like hateful stuff,
right, of course,
I'll just go block them and remove the whole thread of whatever it is.
Yeah, you can control your peace in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Like, I mean, there's enough negativity out in the world. We don't need to slather it all over this stuff too.
We
so
definitely don't.
All over birds, hunting fish.
Right.
Come on. There's nothing sacred anymore.
No, apparently not. But like to flip it, with that said, that's a minority. It's like 2 or 3% of the activity. Right. And the other is fantastic. I've made friends with people all over the world, and I have this network of people that are friends all over the world. And it's fantastic. It's one of the coolest things I think that comes as like a perk from doing this is the friendship that you can build with people all over the world.
Of course. So going back to how you would put your face up as a watermark, that's a demonstration of not taking yourself too seriously. But of course, this photography, videography is serious to you in some sense, right? Like you run courses, you do,
for sure,
sell merch, you do all these things. So I think a lot of people, including myself at times, struggle with how do you find the balance between I'm serious about this and I need to be professional versus like, I'll check my face up on a watermark. Ha ha ha. You know?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you can ever be too serious about any of it. Like you like you just have to, again, kind of that's part of the flow. Like when you get too serious, I think it gets dry and then it becomes like non-human. Mm-hmm. You need to have that human element of whatever that personality is, you know? So I know when we do workshops, I've had a lot of people tell me that, oh, your workshops are different. They're actually more fun because you guys are joking all the time and like, you know, having a good time instead of like always running and kind of like drill sergeanting people to death about like their settings and their stuff. It's all about having a good time. So
yeah, I totally feel that. What are some things people maybe don't know about having a large audience the size of yours? I think everyone's gunning for numbers like that.
I would say like the weirdest thing that I did not anticipate, and I was actually talking about this with some friends the other day, how it confines you in a space of, you have to be very, very careful of everything you say and do out in public. People will do weird things and they'll take things out of context just to try to tear you down. Like for instance, it's not unusual if you're hiking off in the middle of the woods to go to the bathroom. You got to go to the bathroom. There's no bathrooms anywhere. But I can't really do that because there are so many people watching me now. They're going to take photos of me and they're going to go, look at this guy. He took a whiz on this sacred tree. How dare him? Like, I'm not joking. Like that level of weirdness exists.
Just watering it. It was dry. It was a drought.
Right. And it's something that I never anticipated. And I think like on my level, to me, it's still small compared to say like somebody like Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise. I don't know how they have any type of normal life. And like, I can understand why some people would get angry like with the paparazzi or all that stuff. But for me, I think that's the weirdest aspect that I never anticipated was that like, now you got to be really careful.
Did you learn that from like actual lessons? Calling out certain things, not necessarily peeing on a tree. We're not condemning you for that, but
peeing on a tree or two.
Or is it fear based? Is it fear based where it's like, I just don't want this to blow up. I don't want people to have the wrong view of me or try to knock me down? Or is it actual experiences where you're like, damn?
No, totally experiences. I went, I think one of the first times was I went to San Juan Island to photograph some foxes. It's a really cool place where it's an island, you know, so everything is stuck on the island. Nothing can leave or change or evolve. The people brought in rabbits. The rabbits got out of hand, ate some kind of grass that was valuable. And then they brought in foxes to take care of the rabbits. And now there's like this really weird ecosystem where you have lots of rabbits, you have lots of foxes, and you have these eagles that come in and prey on both. So you have these really cool interactions between these animals. And it's pretty popular. And like anything else in life, there's always going to be some people who do bad things. And there are some people that go out there into the places you're not supposed to go and like harass the foxes or get right on top of them or feed them or these kinds of things. But I went to this place the very first time, and I went to an area in a public park where there was a fox and there was about 6 or 8 of us photographing these foxes. One of the most peaceful experiences I've ever had. Everybody's just having a good time watching these little baby foxes play. And somebody in the area didn't like this group of photographers being there. They like the island life is very private. They don't want all of these people coming into the island, and even though it's a public place and we weren't really doing anything. And they were tricky about how they did this. They used a telephoto lens, and they got really far away, and they took a picture of this group of photographers and it compressed it. So it looked like we were all right on top of each other, right on top of these foxes. Whereas if you had looked at an aerial view, there was like 3 people here, like over this way, and then 3 people here, and then 3 people here, and 3 people here, and the foxes were way over here. But because of the angle that they shot it put us all like in one group, like, you know how these telephoto lenses do.
Yeah.
And they alerted the press, and the press got involved, and the press just ran with it. They didn't even like try to validate any of it. And then somehow my name got in there, and it was all my fault. Every bit of it was done by me. All these people, I brought them all there, and I had no idea who any of the people were. I went there by myself. I had just met these people that time. And I started getting attacked online, like specifically Facebook. There was a group of people that were attacking me. And again, I just like, I mean, whatever, I can't, I don't have time for this. Yeah. I really don't. And they didn't stop until somebody there local went to them and said, hey, that's not actually what happened. This is what happened. The paper just ran with it. And none of it's really true at all. So yeah. And I've seen like instances like this a couple of times. There was a time I was in New York on a beach trying to photograph snowy owls. And I had come around the side trail, and in front of me about 50 yards was a big sign that said, stay off the dunes. And somebody took a photo of me with a telephoto and compressed it, and it made it look like I was in front of the sign. And they, look at this asshole. He's out here thinking he can do whatever he wants. And I was like 50 yards behind the sign. So I couldn't even see the sign for one. And I was on a trail that just zipped behind the sign, but they shot it in such a way that, to shed a negative light on me. And I was like, this is crazy. But yes, there's been experiences where you have to be careful.
Is that stuff, we're not at that level, is that stuff damaging? Does it feel like, is it just like, here's another stupid thing that I'm going to ignore and move on? Or do you feel like it is damaging and there has to be damage control?
Sorry to do this to you and take away from the episode, but let's just take a quick pause so that I can ask you one question. Where do you need help improving your photography practice? Do you need help crafting better emails? Do you need help telling a better story with your images? I don't know, maybe it's something entirely different. Aaron and I are offering free, one-time only 30-minute one-on-one video sessions to help you with your specific photography and creative goals. We say this all the time on the show. We're not gurus, and we're constantly learning ourselves. However, we do have experience and a track record of figuring things out in this industry, and we're confident that we can help you fast-track your learning. So if you're benefiting from the general concepts of these episodes, but you want advice and guidance specifically tailored to your unique needs, you can click the link in the episode description to book a one-on-one, one-time 30-minute virtual session entirely for free. Zero cost, you book it at your convenience, and you get 30 minutes of either mine or Aaron's uninterrupted time. You can use the code FREETRIAL, that's free trial spelled FREETRIAL, at checkout. And now we can get back to today's episode.
I don't think it's damaging in the sense, like, I think it's best to just let it go and just continue to do whatever it is you do. And just go with the flow. And you're better off putting your efforts into what you do than to go backwards and try to defend yourself to these people. It doesn't make any sense. Like,
it makes it worse in the sense.
I know the truth, that I was, so I don't need to prove any of it to any of you. So whatever.
Yeah.
Along those lines of Seth's question, with a big following, I think
What was
there's a
the
lot of,
question again? I forget.
it was along the lines of like what comes with
Got it.
big following. But so this is another what comes with a big following. I think there's a lot of people in the social media world that go like, I just got to get to 30,000 followers. I just got to get to 50,000. I got to get to 100,000. And when's that stop? And there, I think at the end of that thought for a lot of people is that if I get to 100,000, all these companies are going to start coming to me and I don't have to do any work. I can just live off the fruits of my following. I'm curious, as you grow, is it an onslaught of opportunity, even with 2 point whatever million it is? Is it an onslaught of opportunity and people throwing money at you, or do you still have to do the work?
Oh no, you do twice the work easily.
Explain.
Yeah, well, it becomes more involved having to. Well, first of all, any of the opportunities that do come your way, 70% of them are complete bogus, or they're garbage. So you have to really spend a lot of time learning how to filter through these things. And I can tell you one that's really popular, at least popular from me. Like these people come to me a lot. There are a lot of podcast people. Wait. This is funny. They're not actually who they say they are. Like they'll say, I work for, and then they'll some, podcast place. And they're very clever how they do this. They'll have an email that like even has like a domain with the podcast person's name in it. And they want you to come do their podcast. And, I've done this enough now to kind of smell it almost immediately. At least I think. Then again, I might be deleting a bunch of podcast interviews. I don't know. But it's weird. So they'll say, yeah, we want to do a podcast. We're going to do it live through, usually the red flag is live through Facebook or live through Instagram. And that's usually, to me, the red flag. And what they're trying to do is, and the only reason I know this is because I fell for it one time. They're trying to get you into the back end of your Meta Business Manager to where you expose some kind of faulty link that they can then grab and then control your account. And from that point, they've done it. So for me, what happened, I can tell you the story really quick. I had done some advertising with some companies that had to actually come into my Facebook Business Manager and have certain assets and controls to be able to run ads on my Facebook page. So when this podcast person came to me after I'd already done a couple of podcasts, I'm like, oh yeah, neat. This is cool. I can just do another podcast. It was the same type of Zoom call to where they're like, yeah, we need to go into the back end and set up these things. I'm like, okay, I've done this for ads. And what they had me do was actually copy some link that they were aware of. I don't even remember what it was, and publicly post it as a test. And as soon as I did that, they went to the page. That link gave them complete access, and they locked me out and deleted all of my credentials immediately.
Wow.
And then I got an email within 5 minutes that said, "Hey, we have your Facebook account. We're demanding a ransom of some absurd amount of money." And my reply was, "Keep it. I don't really care. I'll make another one. Like whatever."
Mm-hmm.
But in the background, I went to Facebook and I told them what was going on, and it took Facebook about 2 weeks to root them out of there and get them out. So now I'm very leery of all of these podcast things that come in, but that's one of the more popular ones. So you spend more time, and kind of get back to the original thing. You spend more time working to prove that these things are legit. And it does become a big time suck. Now, with that said, there are a lot of more opportunities that do open up, good opportunities that you can definitely take advantage of. But yeah, you have to work twice as hard, I would say, at doing all this. And then you have to also start shedding some of the responsibility of social media, be it, I'm going to go respond to everybody. You might not be able to do that anymore once you start getting so many comments. Otherwise, you'd have to hire somebody else to go do all of that for you. And I think some people do that. I don't. I just kind of try to do it all myself.
It's a one-man show.
Where?
Hey, Seth,
Mark, make sure you click the link I just emailed you.
Hold on.
I muted Mark. Let's not get into his Facebook right away because it might be obvious. Let's wait 2 weeks or so.
2 weeks.
All right, I'm unmuting him. Anyways, Mark, back to the podcast.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Damn podcasters, slime balls.
Slime balls.
They're just fake.
We're real.
And, you know, the other thing that's really weird to me too, that I never anticipated, where there's a lot of fake accounts that are impersonating me. And because I have like a rich engagement, it's easy prey for them. So they'll make an account that says like Mark Smith fan page. And then they'll go to a post of mine that has like 1 million views and X amount of comments. And they'll start replying to every one of them going, oh, hey, thanks. This is my fan page. If you want to talk to me personally, come here.
Oh,
and
wow.
dude, it's crazy. What they do is they wrangle them over there, and then they will get them off of whatever app it is and try to get them on some other app like WhatsApp or Telegram or something like that. And then they usually prey on women. Then they will love bomb these women and say, I love you. You know, I this is the romance I've been wanting my whole life. By the way, I'm stuck in England somewhere. Can you send me $1,000 to get home?
Wow. How many relationships are you in?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Holy.
Unfortunately, these people fall for it.
I know I shouldn't be laughing. It's sad. They do it because it works, right?
Well, and here's where they've gone a step further that I found out about 6 months ago. They have trained an AI on my voice.
Oh, here we go.
They call them with my voice, and these people think it's me. Like my kids would know. I've played it for my kids. They're like, that's not you, but it's close. It's like scary close. So these people that don't know me well, they fall for it every time. And suddenly I get a message that'll say, hey, are you all right? And did you get the $1,000 I sent you? I'm like, oh, no. That's not me.
Yeah.
This is something weird. Some like person that's doing this. So
does your family have a safe word yet? I mean, Aaron and I have talked about this too.
yes.
Just because we have like 200 and some odd episodes, people could sample our voice and no problem. I've sampled my own voice before, and like it's an important thing people need to start thinking about, especially even if you're talking into reels. People can just swipe your voice, AI it, call your family and say, I've been taken hostage, send money to so-and-so. And you got to have the safe word. Okay, what's the password?
Yeah. Well, we do. We're totally, me and my kids have a safe word. So
I think everybody should start thinking about that as we enter the age of AI. Have a safe word that you can identify if it's, you know, AI ransom or not, or actually the person.
Yeah. Yep.
Craziness.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to deal with any of that.
What's that?
I wouldn't want to deal with any of that.
No, that's a different league.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common questions you get asked? They can be techie or otherwise.
The most common question is, where did you take this photo? Or
Oh my God.
hands down, that's the most asked thing ever.
Do you have a
people aren't going to want to be of your size or level of success?
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Yeah. Do you have a canned response for that you just copy and paste, or do you just leave it?
It depends, really. Like I kind of just try to feel it out. It depends on the location. Mm-hmm. If the location I've been to and the people there know me and have asked me not to share, then I will not.
Right.
If it's like a place where I might go myself that I do here in Florida, I'll usually tell people. So,
are there any common ones that you do like answering that aren't annoying?
Questions?
Yeah. That have maybe just come up in DMs or in casual conversation.
I think, gear also, what camera did you use? That's probably the second one.
Do you think that's a valid question? Like, do you think people put too much? I know you do a lot of gear review.
Yeah.
Not
really, but.
Well, not like review, but a lot of your YouTube titles are shot with the D, Do you think, people put too much weight into gear? I guess would be the way to summarize the question.
Yeah. 100%.
How come? Or how so?
Again, it's what is that old saying? It's not the camera, it's the
photographer.
The camera is behind the camera that's doing it. So
the arrow.
Yeah, for sure. But like also with that said, each camera manufacturer and camera body and lens has a specific like sweet spot or purpose where they would work better, for certain things. And then like the whole argument of, what's better, Sony, Nikon, or Canon, they're all good. Like if you
have understood that argument, like everything, the difference in quality has got to be so minute, like hundredths of a percentage.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. There's certain things that some cameras can do better than others, for sure. There's no question. And like I think some of the stuff I do is some of the hardest on camera, specifically birds, like right on top of the water line and staying right on top of the water line. That is where every camera will struggle because the water has a lot of contrast and the ripples confuse the camera over the bird. But we're kind of moving away from that a little bit now with some of the AI technology in the cameras that has really good subject recognition. It can now kind of deviate the two and stay where it needs to be. Whereas like just a year or two ago, that was still kind of problematic.
I guess for me,
cameras do it better than others. So
fair. I guess for me, like I'm not a big tech guy. I'll upgrade when something I'm trying to do, when I've hit my limit with whatever I'm using.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so sort of what you just mentioned, you're trying to do birds along the water. Oh, my camera won't do it. Oh, there's one that exists that can do it. Okay, maybe I'll look into that. I guess I feel like I hear what you're saying. Like, obviously certain cameras can do certain things better than others, for sure. I just wonder if there's too much emphasis placed on I'll be a good photographer if I have the A9. I need that to be able to be a good photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
It's the same with music, where you have like a intermediate guitarist thinks if they spend 10,000 on this new guitar, I mean, it's going to sound great. But if I gave David Gilmour a Strat versus an SG versus a Gibson versus an Epiphone, he's going to play the crap out of it.
Yeah.
Like no
and he's
matter
going to play it how it's meant to be played. And that's
no matter what,
right?
Yeah. And I think guitar is a good analogy. Like a Strat has a certain sound. An SG has a certain sound. A Les Paul has a certain sound. A hollow body has a certain sound. But you need to know how to play it. And there might be little nuances, but you could play jazz on a Strat. You could play jazz on a Les Paul. You could play jazz on a hollow body. Like you can do all the things. They're just slight little preferences. Maybe it's a color scheme that you like on Nikon better. Maybe it's the autofocus you love on Sony that really works for you, and you can deal with whatever the color may be. It's all these trade-offs. But you pick what you like and what sticks with you, and make the best of it.
Yeah, 100%. And the guitar analogy is great too. And I think guitars are a little different in the sense that they're almost like a living thing. Like a lot of guitars, like the more time you put into them and the more blood, sweat, and tears you put into the guitar, the better it starts to sound. Mm-hmm. At least that's been my experience with a guitar. Mm-hmm. Sometimes like a brand new guitar, it's like a brand new pair of shoes. It's kind of stiff, doesn't really feel right. But one that's 10 years old that's been like played the crap out of, it might just sing more beautifully than any other one. Mm-hmm. Cameras not so much, because I think they're, little microcomputers, but maybe like
with that, those settings on a camera, if you learn your menu inside out, like a Sony menu, that's a encyclopedia. If you learn certain little things of like, it's kind of like a nuance of I'm gonna try flat wound strings, and that gives me a slightly different set. Like I'm gonna do this little setting, or that setting does that. That's my default. Like I think there's little things where you learn the camera over years and stop switching gear all the time, where you become like, this is I know this inside out. I can you tell me to do a setting, I know exactly where it is. I'm switching it in a second, versus kind of relearning that over and over and over and over again, sticking with equipment.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think too, when you do stick with equipment, you see where it underperforms too. So you try to work around whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. And then it's so like, I think one of the great things about photography and videography is I don't think it's something that you would really ever master. I think it's like you can become proficient with it, but it's so dynamic and changing all of the time. At least what I do, like with wildlife, like the light is never really ever the same. The animal behavior is probably never really the same, or you might have this element that got thrown in, and all of these things are changing and evolving like instantaneously while you're out there. So you can kind of see where certain cameras or lenses might work better in certain environments with the light, the backlight, the reflections that are happening, all that stuff. So, yeah.
If you had to use one body and one lens to go out and film, let's say ospreys, what'll it be?
That's pretty easy. Are we talking stills or video or both?
Let's say you're going out to shoot both.
I would use the Sony A1 II, which isn't out yet, but I've used it, so I know what it's capable of. And then for me with the Ospreys, I would use the Sony 600 f4. No question.
Yeah.
That is like pure magic. 100%.
That was pretty quick answer. What if it was just photo?
If it was just photo, I would do the same.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Like
what if you had to have a more budget camera?
Oh, okay.
Let's make it relatable because I don't know how many people can.
What if we're not rich?
Yeah, good for A1 too. Ooh, more budget. Maybe the Z8.
Okay.
Ooh, Nikon.
Yeah. I think the Z8. There's a lot of bang for the buck in that camera. It's not like super expensive, I guess. And then Nikon's got some really good glass too.
Yeah.
Maybe their 180 to 600 lens would be good. Yeah, but I think that's like a medium. Like, I don't think it would be entry level. I think that would be like a medium level entry spot.
Yeah, like you're into photography.
Yeah, for sure.
At that point.
Sometimes medium entry though is a good place to start, in my opinion.
I agree.
I'm going to go the level up from where I'm at because I know I am serious about this, and I won't have to buy something new right away.
Sure.
But I'm also not going to splurge on the most expensive thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people do. They'll go out and buy like the A1 II and like this mindset that we were talking about a little bit, and think that they're just going to go get these amazing photos and pictures, and they're a little disappointed when it doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah.
Like, damn it, Mark, you said mindset podcast. You said it.
No.
Yeah, I had one guy come to me once and he said, "I've seen what you do, and I've seen videos of you. It's not hard. There's no reason I can't do it." And he picked it up and he's like, "I can't do this." And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I've been out here every day for the past 7 years doing this. So.
Right. So it's reps. That's what. It's repetitions. Right.
Has your passion in photography shifted to video, or is video a vehicle to get people nowadays with social media to see your photography?
Good question.
I started for
it was
video.
very succinct also, Seth. Did you notice that?
It was succinct, Aaron. Yeah. He kept it under 10 seconds. That's got to be a record. For our loyal listeners, they'll know.
Yeah. Usually my questions start with, in third grade, I had an aptitude for clarinet. By the fourth grade, and I get to a question 20 minutes later.
So when I bought my first DSLR, I bought a Nikon D5300, I think it was, in 2016. Wasn't that
my first camera too?
Yeah. And I got it because it was the only camera at the time that would record in 1080p and 60 frames per second.
The times changed.
Yes, there was no Canon couldn't do that, and I don't even know if Sony was a thing. I was not aware at the time. So I got it solely to do video, and then started taking more and more stills, and it flipped for me that way. And I found that I loved still photography. At the time, I lived in Colorado, so the San Juan Mountains, it was new to me. And so going out every day and seeing these mountains and all of these elk and new animals were fascinating. And to be able to capture them and take photos of them was great. And then the waterfalls too. I was like a big fan of all the waterfalls I could find, and learning photography that way. And I had a pretty interesting moment that I've shared with a lot of people. There's a place there outside of the town of Ouray. I don't know if you've ever been in Western Colorado. Beautiful place. There's a place called Yankee Boy Basin. It's really hard to get to Yankee Boy Basin. You have to take a 4x4 vehicle, and it's like a white knuckle ride. Like, you're literally hugging the side of a cliff. And you drive up to this basin that's, I think the base level is like 11,500 feet. So it's pretty high up there. And the basin is just full of, in the summer, full of all of these beautiful flowers everywhere, every kind of color. There's like little pikas, there's marmots, there's deer, there's moose, and there's hummingbirds everywhere. And the backdrop is like this snow-capped peak, and then there's waterfalls. And I had this very surreal moment when I had gotten there, and I parked and I walked maybe half a mile up, which is, for me, being a Floridian, was hard because of the lack of oxygen. And I sat down and just watched these hummingbirds. And I suddenly understood the relationship between aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and what all of that stuff meant. It was just like there it is. Here's this information, and now you understand it. And I joke about it and say, I don't know if it was the lack of oxygen to my brain that kind of made me think differently, or being in this like amazingly overwhelming environment full of beauty, or a combination of the two. But it was a very profound moment. And then from that point on, it was just kind of granularly nitpicking and trying to fine tune it, so to speak. So I deviated from your question. So I started with video, went to stills, and then went back to video probably 4 years ago. So before like reels and vertical video was ever a thing, I was still on my A9, which is an older Sony camera. I was recording video of ospreys in slow motion, and I learned some extremely valuable stuff. And I suggest everybody that wants to do wildlife photography also try wildlife video. And here's why. You will learn so much about your subject that you can't see in real time. Like for instance, if an osprey is doing something specific, it might be 1/10 of a second signal that they're going to go down. And that happens so quick, you don't see it with your eyes, but when you record it like an 8x slow motion, you see it pretty glaringly. And you can relate that back to real time. And then you start to understand their behaviors. You're like, oh, I can predict this because of this little wink that he just did, and now he's going to go do this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that you learn that's really important is where you, as the photographer or videographer, are making all of the mistakes. Because if you're recording at 8x slow motion and you overpan for 1 second, it's going to be an 8-second error when you go back to view it. So it like puts a magnifying glass on your technique where your technique is sloppy. And if you can look at that the right way, you can then go back and go, oh, okay, I need to tighten up this area. So for me, like when I was doing all this, I was doing it really just as a learning experience. I was learning so much about the animals, their behavior, how they were doing things, because it was slowing down all of these moments that I couldn't process in real time. And then the underlying thing was learning all of these places I was making mistakes. And then when the Sony a7S III came out, it was the first Sony camera that could do 4K 120. And I was so excited to have it. I bought it immediately. I shot nothing but video on that camera for 4 months during what I would call our osprey season. Everybody else is out there taking stills and I'm doing video after it. I have like 20 terabytes of amazing osprey footage. Didn't really know what to do with it at the time, but I was just sitting on it. But in that process, I learned all of these things. And then when I went back and said, okay, today I'm going to do stills, the one shot that people wanted the ospreys, with the talons out right at the water, every single time, got it, every single time. Because I had learned so much about them and how to read their behavior, and then so much about my sloppy technique and had tightened it up, that it actually made my photography 100% better.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. I think most people go the opposite direction, right? Photography to video. I've always wondered how people get that talons out right above the water. And it's got to be animal, just knowing the cues. This is about to happen.
It is, for sure.
I have to do a PSA. The photographer mindset does not recommend depleting your oxygen to improve your photography game.
Good PSA.
Thank you.
Good.
we got to cover all our legal bases.
Yes.
That's so funny. So a lot of your content is obviously ospreys, eagles, birds, things of that nature.
Yep.
Do you ever feel boxed in? You talked about San Juan Island, photographing foxes, elk. I know a lot of people struggle with this. Like, I've gotten a lot of popularity doing this, but I'm so much more.
Yes.
More, and I want to share that. But it does. People don't find it as interesting because I'm the osprey guy.
That's right. And people will flat out tell you this.
And so what's the antidote? I don't care.
Mix it up. Do what you want to do because it's all about you anyways. So not in an ego way. I mean, it's about doing what you want to do. And
this is my page, right?
Yeah. If people like it, cool. And I will it's interesting that you said that, because I had this recently. I posted some landscape shots that I had done, and somebody said, these are great, but there's like 50 million people that post stuff just like this, but there's nobody that does the birds like you do. So just keep doing the birds. And I was like, but I like doing this too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to continue to do both.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe there's nobody. Well, yeah, because then you can make the argument, okay, well, there's nobody like me who does the birds like this and landscapes like together.
Yeah,
this is what makes me me.
Yeah.
Right, which is, I think, a better way to think about it. I guess it comes down to maybe people taking themselves too seriously. Like, I have to do. It becomes. I feel like it gets to a point where the audience can own you.
Oh yeah, that makes sense for sure.
right? You become a slave to the audience, and then I feel like you can lose the passion for what, as an artist, as a creator.
Yeah, you can't let that happen.
Right. And I feel like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, a tie to music. It reminds me of an artist that comes up with an album and it's a hit album, and then they're doomed. Their second album's similar to the first, then it's the same as the first. They didn't grow at all. If it's different, if it's a departure, they changed. They're doing different stuff. We go back to the first album. Like it's, as an artist, I feel like it's tough once you get a following to you're gonna displease a lot lot of people.
Well, it's Rick Rubin, right? The audience comes last.
Yeah,
some people agree with that. Some people disagree with that.
Yeah. I agree with him on that one. Like, yeah, he's an interesting dude, and his book, I haven't finished reading it, but it's just like nugget after nugget of good wisdom.
What's the title of the book?
The Creative something. I don't remember, the Creative Process or something like that.
Right.
I'm probably saying that completely wrong.
I'll have to put that on my reading list.
It's fantastic. If you like him, he goes out there to some deep stuff on creativity and how it happens and why it happens and when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
How do you build your reading list? You said you like to read books. I know how I build mine. I'm curious to know how you build yours. Like, do you go looking for stuff?
I do. I'm bad. I go to Barnes and Noble because I love the experience, and then I buy everything on my Kindle.
That's funny.
Totally.
I'm kind of like call it like the book tree or the book link. I'll pick up a book, and you know how often authors reference other pieces of books?
Yeah.
When they do that, I'll write down that book.
Yeah.
And then I'll buy that book, or I'll read that book eventually, and then there'll be mentions of other things. And it's just like this nice, fluid dispersal of information and knowledge.
I do the same thing. Yeah, I just finished 2 books by the same author. I don't remember his name, which is probably bad. But the first book was called, let me think, hold on, I'm going to get this wrong. I think it was called Blitzed, Drugs in the Third Reich, something along those lines.
Oh.
And then his follow-up to that was Tripped, and had to do with hallucinogenics in America. But
Norman Ohler?
Maybe. I don't know.
Drugs in Nazi Germany?
Yes. Fantastic read. I highly recommend. Learn a lot that I had no idea about. Yeah.
The entire German army in World War II on methamphetamine for Blitzkrieg?
Pretty much. That's why they were unstoppable.
That's wild.
They were on meth. Yeah.
Jeez.
That's something I've gotten a lot more interested in recently is like learning about history. I always thought it was lame, but it's so fascinating the how times can rhyme.
It is. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And then the follow-up to that, Tripped, is a lot about like the birth of LSD and why it was and how it became and all of these really interesting things, very, very interesting things. And he cites everything, like everything has like a citation that can go back to where he got the actual information from. So
that's cool.
Half of the book is the citations. So
that's really cool. See, how I would work is I would put these books on my reading list. And then when I go to read them, if there's any reference to more literature, I would buy those.
Yeah.
I feel like you get this organic culmination of what you're interested in.
I do that too, but I love the Barnes and Noble experience. Yeah. I don't know why, but I love to go and just thumb through books. I might not even buy anything, but sometimes that's where I start this path that you're talking about.
Again, seems like a form of meditation. I know Aaron will say it.
Yeah.
You know?
I would say so. Definitely.
I have another question for you.
Let me have it.
Not as a podcast host. How can people best put themselves in a position to capture great images or video? Whether that's like physically or opportunity wise.
So, I can only comment on like wildlife, right?
Sure.
Mostly, right? That's where I spend most of my time. And I fully believe that story comes before everything, including light. I think sometimes people get stuck in a light quest where they have to have a specific light and they miss the story. And I think story is very, very important because that's what 90% of the people connect to. Like the photographers know light. Most people don't. and they won't judge something based on light. They'll judge it based on story. So for me, story is first. And for wildlife, there's a very simple, a very simple idea somebody told me many, many years ago, an older wildlife photographer. For every animal, including humans, if you can find 3 things, you'll find that target animal. And those 3 things are food, whatever that animal eats, water, and a place where they feel safe or comfortable. If you can find those 3 things, how they relate to your target subject, you will put yourself at the best odds of capturing them doing what they do in life. And I think that's what you're trying to capture as a wildlife photographer, these epic moments of life, like, good or bad, and then share them with people. And I think it's very, very important to have an emotional connection to your subject and try to make sure that emotional connection is always there for the viewer as well, for them to become emotionally connected with whatever it is. Because I think as human beings, we're highly emotional beings. And I think that's like one of the keys to doing any good story is to be emotionally invested. So, if that makes sense.
I love that. It's simplifying a very complex process with those 3 criteria.
Yeah. And you can nitpick that. You can go really far. But that's the simplest way,
That's like the fundamentals, they would say.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
So you can go further. Like if you're looking for osprey, so osprey eat fish. What kind of fish do they eat?
Right.
When are those fish the most abundant? Are the fish migrating? Are the birds following the migrating fish? Are the fish spawning? There's different aspects to all of that. And then you can go, well, what does the fish eat that they're after? And you can just continue to go. But the more knowledge you have about your subject, whatever it is, the better off you will be at taking their photo. And I think that knowledge comes before even photography. Like you need to be able to put yourself in those moments and then practice the craft of photography as you put yourself into those moments.
So speaking of books and resources, outside of just getting outdoors and experiencing and learning, do you have any resources that you've liked to, read up on for wildlife behavior? I know I have Peterson's Guide, the North American Mammals. That's a great one. Are there any for birds that you've liked, or is this just knowledge from your observation?
I think outside in the field is the best because you'll learn a lot of things that are not in books. It's
like language, right? You can spend all day doing Duolingo and then you get to the country and you freeze versus spending a week there. You'll pick some things up a lot quicker.
Yeah. I have an older friend of mine who's done this for a long time, and he always has some interesting comments. And one of the ones that he has for this very thing is all of these animals read different books than we do.
Nice.
Yeah.
100% true. Mm-hmm. So you need to be out there just kind of experiencing. And I think that's the best way.
So. Right.
With that, I think it sounds like you have an environment where osprey are obviously in Florida. How hard is it to not get stuck on a certain pier or a certain rock versus trying different angles, trying different areas? Is there more value out of learning a very small environment, like you said, that as fish that are plenty, they're there, and then learning that environment really well versus constantly traveling and searching for? It's more of like the chase versus the knowledge.
I think the knowledge is best, like in a smaller area. Like even where I go daily, it's pretty large. It's right on the coast. It's an inlet, so the Atlantic is on one side, the water comes in, and you have the intercoastal on the other. There's a tide pool where things happen, and there are about 4 or 5 hot spots for these birds. And if you go chasing them, even in this tiny area, you will do just that. You will chase them from spot A to spot B to spot C to spot D. The best thing to do is just sit put and wait and see what they do, and let them lead you or let them come to you, unless it looks like they're in an activity, an area where there's like a lot of fish and you're on the wrong place. But you need to give that some time. Like during these times, sometimes it's not unusual for there to be 40 or 50 of these birds in one little area. Mm-hmm. And if they're all going in one spot getting fished, then obviously that's where you want to go. But if 1 or 2 go and get a fish and then the rest are kind of just hovering around, it's best to just kind of wait it out and see where the majority of them are going to go. My dog's going to bark. Hold on.
Whoa! Hey-o.
Hey, come here. Come here.
Here, Pooch.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's the best dog bark we've ever had on the show. It sounded like a big Rottweiler. He's going to pick it up and it's going to be like a Chihuahua.
Yeah.
There is a Chihuahua, but there is a. You should come up here. Come on.
I thought I heard a high pitch one.
This is the. That's the one that sounds ferocious. He's a border collie lab.
Yeah, lab mix.
Yeah.
Good
Anyone
bark.
who was just driving, I hope you're not in a ditch.
Yeah.
So
Right. Here's it. Help me get the little one. Come here.
you get the little one and subscribe on YouTube so you can see the little Chihuahua.
He's old and
Oh,
Hey.
cute.
Oh,
Way to protect the house.
Yeah.
yeah. This interesting. This is Roscoe. He's my late wife's dog, and he was connected to her side, like never left her side. Had massive separation anxiety.
Oh,
And when she died, he had like a deep dive of depression and didn't eat for like 2 weeks. And we didn't think he was going to make it. Even got to a point where the vet was like, hey, we might have to start giving him some kind of IV fluids and stuff. And then he kind of just, after about 2 weeks, came out of it. And now he's glued to me. He's moved all of that energy to me. So it was interesting. That was not something that I anticipated. So
handsome
He
fella.
kind of looks like an osprey.
Same colors.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
he does.
He's an interesting little dog.
Yeah.
Aaron, hit Mark with our finale question that you like.
The question I like towards the end, I think if we could go back in time and look at our younger photographer self or videographer self and see where we are today, is there any advice you would give yourself or pinnacle moment that changed everything for you that you can reflect on and maybe share with some of our listeners?
I think that's a pretty deep, almost therapy related question.
Yeah, well, that's what I like to do here.
I think I know me personally, what I would do is I would go back and tell my younger self everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Simple as that. Mark Smith, thanks for joining us today, man.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Appreciate it. That was awesome. Till next time.
Yeah.